Did you happen to meet Sean?
Sean? No.
So, alright, here's the 4 items of note from since the last time I saw you. Found a really kick-ass bungee cord. And
It is. Oh man, that's
it's still got the tag on it. It's really good, give you that. And then I was maybe about 3-4 miles outside of Offerley, the last town back, and I'm walking and I hear, "Hey!" I look over on the road, there's a guy on a bicycle on the other side of the road, and he goes, and he's passing me as he talks to me. He goes, "Hey, are you that guy? Are you that guy walking to Cincinnati?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, that's me." And he's like, "Hey, Linda and Warren were telling me about you." And so he waits for traffic to clear, and he crosses over on his bike and comes back to me, and he just comes over on my shoulder and stops, and he's like, "Yeah, man, Lindy and Warren were telling me all about you. You're walking to Cincinnati?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh man, I came from Taos, and I'm going to Maine. I've been kind of just a ski bum this winter up in Taos, but I was doing fishing for a while, but I used to be a raft guide out in Maine." And so, did I say Spain?
you started to.
Maine. And so I'm going back to Maine to be a raft guide again. And I'm like, "Damn, that's cool." And he's like, "Yeah, fishing, I like fishing, but it's just not very good for the environment. It's not very sustainable. But rafting, you're on your raft, and it's really low impact, and it's cool. And when I was working for the fishing industry, yeah, it's just not that sustainable. And I was working for all these maggots, and I'm like, "Yeah, I hear you." And he's like, "Yeah, so I got into Dodge City, and pretty good vibe there. I didn't know what to expect with Dodge City, but I liked it." And Sean, he was wearing sunglasses, he was on the bike, and he had a cap on and a purple windbreaker, and he had these Willie Nelson braids. And he's like, "Yeah, so I got into town, and this guy stopped me, and he's like, 'Hey, have you heard of warmshower.com?' And I'm like, 'No.' And he's like, 'Well, I know these people, and they're on that website, and they'll let people who are biking around take a warm shower in their house. And I know these people really well. I'll give you their address, and you just show up, and they'll hook you up with a warm shower.' And so he's like, 'Cool, thanks.' And so he goes to the address, and the same guy opens the door. It's a Warren. And he's like, 'Yeah, Warren's a real joker. He's a real funny guy.' And so it was Warren, and it was like the night after we stayed there. So if we had taken him up on his invitation to stay an extra night, we would have been with this biker guy named Sean, bicyclist. And so he just like went along with me for a while. And another story he told me, he's like, 'Yeah, that's so cool that you're opening a youth center. I actually helped out at a youth center for a while when I was up in Montana, and it was up in Big Sky.' And I'm like, 'No shit.' My partner, she lived up in Bozeman for a while, and he's like, 'That's actually where the youth center was out of, but we would take kids to Big Sky on the weekends.' And I'm like, 'I'll have to check with Linda to see if this is one of the ones Mikan went to,' because Mikan went to, of course, a lot of youth centers up there. And it was a Big Sky Youth Empowerment Program. And he cited a lady named Allison, who he says doesn't work there anymore, but he loved her programs. And he said Big Sky, it wasn't BS Yep, it was just BEP, Big Sky Youth Empowerment Program, and they would have all the kids say BEP in the morning. But so that was like a really super cool experience. And then I was walking down the road getting really close to Offerley here, and this big wide, what looked like a white maintenance truck starts getting off the road, and I kind of move over, and they get off the road behind me. And but I'm booking it. I already had my ramen. Actually, the ramen, no story, I just saw it in the ditch, and I went down to check on it, and there were a few bags that were outside of the box that had obviously gotten into, this one's actually a little broken into too, but the field mice had gotten into them. And then I'm like, well, let me check the ones inside. And I checked 2, and neither of them were open. So I figured even if we didn't use, well, we'll see. But there's only four ramens in here anyway, and they're slightly open and may have field mice poop in them. But nonetheless, so then the last story, as I was getting close to Offerly, I started to say maintenance truck pulls over. I gave him the thumbs up in case he was pulling over for me, like I'm good, I'm just walking. And then I turned around and he was just pulled over there, and so I turned around and gave him a big thumbs up because I wanted to just keep going. And then I kept walking, and then behind me I hear, "Hey!" And I turn around and this guy is jogging towards me, and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" Kind of give him the peace sign, and he's like, "Hey, I'm that cop who stopped you the other day. Hey, I don't have much money on me, but that youth center you were talking about sounded really cool. Here's what I've got on me." And he was in plain clothes. He was the cop I told you about who looked like a teenager, but in plain clothes without his big glasses and hat on. He looked like he was maybe in his mid-20s, but he had, big cherubic face, just a little squat blonde white guy. And he was like, "Yeah, your youth center sounds so cool. Here's what I got on me." And I'm like, "Is this a donation?" And he's like, "Yeah." and it was $6, but I just thought that was so cool, So
Nice.
so for our viewing audience, this $6, we will make sure that when we get home, we might spend this actual $6, but as soon as we get home, we will put another $6 in the Zia Youth account, because that's another donation from an officer of the peace here in Kansas.
Nice.